Have you ever had a quiet afternoon turn into something completely unexpected? I never imagined that sitting in my garden with my brother could lead to a moment that would change how I saw both him and myself. What happened next was nothing I could have planned, yet it left a mark I'll carry forever. Don't forget, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and write in the comments which city you are listening from. This is very important for us. And now, enjoy listening. I remember that afternoon with perfect clarity. The sun had just begun to tilt toward the horizon, spilling a soft golden light across the garden. Shadows stretched lazily across the neatly trimmed hedges and the flower beds that my brother Daniel and I had painstakingly tended over the years. He was sitting beside me on the wrought iron bench, half leaning back, eyes squinting against the sunlight, a quiet smile tugging at the corner of his lips. There was something comforting in the rhythm of our silence, a familiarity that spoke louder than any words could. We had always shared these quiet moments that weren't filled with chatter or plans, but with presence. I sipped my iced tea and felt the gentle breeze brush against my skin, carrying the faint scent of lavender and freshly cut grass. Daniel, ever the observer, watched the birds flit between the trees. "Do you ever think about how much this garden has changed?" he asked softly. I smiled, watching a pair of sparrows chase each other near the rose bushes. "All the time? It's funny, isn't it? How something as small as a garden can feel alive, like it remembers us." Daniel chuckled, shaking his head. "Only you would think a garden has memory, but I get it. It does have a soul." We were halfway through reminiscing about summers past when the sound of the garden gate creaking caught our attention. The gardener, Mr. Hargrove, appeared, carrying a worn leather satchel. He had been working with us for years, quietly and diligently, almost like a shadow moving among the flowers and trees. There was a gravitas to him, the kind that made people listen without realizing they were doing it. "Good afternoon, Elizabeth, Daniel," he greeted, his voice low and measured. "I hope I'm not disturbing anything." I waved him over. "Not at all. We were just enjoying the late afternoon." He approached, setting down his bag and kneeling to inspect a patch of marigolds near the fountain. Daniel and I exchanged a glance, a silent communication born of years of shared experience. There was something different in the way Mr. Hargrove moved today, a deliberate slowness, a kind of quiet anticipation. Then he spoke, and I nearly dropped my glass. "I've been meaning to ask, would either of you be interested in a rather unusual opportunity?" I blinked, unsure if I had heard him correctly. Daniel raised an eyebrow, his posture stiffening slightly. "Unusual how?" he asked cautiously. Mr. Hargrove straightened, his eyes meeting mine with a seriousness that made my pulse quicken. "It's something outside the realm of typical garden work, but I think it could be enlightening for both of you. If you're willing to explore it, that is." I felt a shiver run through me, not entirely unpleasant. There was something about the calm certainty in his voice, the respect with which he addressed us, that made me trust him in ways I didn't fully understand yet. "What kind of opportunity?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "It's difficult to explain without seeing it firsthand," he replied. "It involves the garden, of course. And it involves connection, trust, vulnerability, and the willingness to step outside your comfort zone." Daniel leaned forward slightly, his curiosity piqued despite his careful demeanor. "Connection and vulnerability? In the garden?" "Yes," Mr. Hargrove said, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "The garden can teach us more than pruning techniques or seasonal planting. It can reveal truths about ourselves and about the people we care about, but it requires a certain openness." I felt my heart beating faster. The idea was unexpected, almost surreal, yet I couldn't deny the flutter of excitement coursing through me. There was a subtle tension now, one that wasn't uncomfortable but electric in its unpredictability. I glanced at Daniel, whose gaze had softened in a way that mirrored my own curiosity. "What would we have to do?" I asked. Mr. Hargrove studied us both for a long moment. "Come with me, just follow my lead, and see where it takes you." Without waiting for a formal decision, he stood and began walking toward a secluded part of the garden, one that we had rarely explored. Daniel and I exchanged a look, a mix of hesitation and intrigue, before rising from the bench. We followed him, the gravel crunching softly under our feet. The air felt different here, heavier with the scent of jasmine and wet earth. Sunlight filtered through the branches in warm, uneven beams, casting a mosaic of shadows across the path. It felt intimate, almost secretive, as if the garden itself had conspired to set the stage for something transformative. When Mr. Hargrove finally stopped, he gestured to a small, sun-dappled clearing. "This is where it begins," he said quietly. "All I ask is that you trust each other, and me. The rest will come naturally." I looked at Daniel, then at Mr. Hargrove. Something deep inside me stirred, a mixture of anticipation, nervousness, and something unspoken tender. The moment was fragile, yet full of possibility. I realized then that this ordinary afternoon, meant only for reminiscing and relaxation, had shifted into something extraordinary. And in that moment, I understood that the garden was more than just a collection of flowers and trees. It was a place of discovery, of connection, and perhaps of unexpected openings into the heart. I took a deep breath, feeling a quiet courage settle in my chest. Whatever came next, I knew it would change me, and maybe Daniel, in ways we couldn't yet imagine. We stepped into the clearing hesitantly, the soft rustle of leaves and the distant hum of bees wrapping around us like a gentle cloak. Mr. Hargrove had paused in the center, his eyes surveying the small circle of sunlight that fell over the grass. There was a stillness here that made the air feel heavier, charged, as if something invisible had been waiting for us. "Before we begin," he said, turning to face us, "I want you to understand that what we're about to do is entirely about trust. Not just with me, but with each other. You can say no at any time. There's no pressure." Daniel shifted his weight, arms folded, a faint tension still in his jaw, but his eyes met mine with something I hadn't seen before. Curiosity edged with a quiet eagerness. I felt a similar pull in my chest, a strange mixture of nervousness and anticipation. Somehow, I trusted him completely, yet I also knew this was going to challenge me in ways I couldn't yet see. Mr. Hargrove knelt and opened his satchel, revealing several objects: a small bundle of herbs, a length of silk ribbon, and what looked like a hand-carved wooden box. My curiosity piqued. I leaned slightly forward. "These," he said, holding up the herbs, "are for grounding. They will help you stay present, open, and aware of your senses. Everything else will follow naturally, but it requires full attention. Nothing rushed, nothing forced." I took a deep breath, inhaling the subtle scent of rosemary and lavender as he handed us each a small bundle. The fragrance was soothing, almost hypnotic, and I felt a wave of calm wash over me. Daniel mirrored my movements, his fingers brushing against mine as we accepted the herbs. There was an unspoken intimacy in that small contact, a quiet acknowledgement of the vulnerability we were about to share. "Now," Mr. Hargrove said, motioning to the center of the clearing, "I want you to close your eyes. Breathe deeply in and out. Feel the earth beneath your feet, the air on your skin, the warmth of the sun. Let yourselves exist fully in this moment." I did as he instructed, letting the sounds of the garden fill my senses: the chirping of the birds, the soft flutter of leaves in the breeze, the faint hum of bees moving from flower to flower. Daniel's presence beside me was grounding, a comforting anchor. Even with my eyes closed, I could sense his slight movements, the rise and fall of his chest, the faint warmth radiating from him. Minutes passed in silence. Then, Mr. Hargrove's voice cut softly through the stillness. "Now, I want you to open your eyes and look at each other, really look. Not as siblings, not as family, not as someone you've known all your life. Look at each other as if you're meeting for the first time. I opened my eyes slowly and met Daniel's gaze. The familiar contours of his face seemed different somehow, more vivid, more present. There was a softness in his expression, a depth I hadn't fully noticed before, and I realized my heart was fluttering in a way that surprised me. His eyes held a mixture of curiosity and gentle warmth, and for a moment, we simply held each other's gaze. "It's about seeing," Mr. Hargrove said, stepping back slightly. "Really seeing, and being seen. When people are truly seen, they can't help but connect." I felt a lump rise in my throat. I had spent decades knowing Daniel as my brother, my companion, my confidant. But this was different. There was an intimacy here that had nothing to do with familiarity and everything to do with raw presence. He reached out slowly, and I mirrored him instinctively. Our hands met in the center, fingers interlacing gently. There was no rush, no expectation, just the quiet recognition of each other as whole, complex people, vulnerable, alive, and seen. The contact sent a ripple through me, a sensation that was entirely new yet profoundly comforting. "Let your connection guide you," Mr. Hargrove said softly. "Notice the energy between you. Let it tell you what it needs." I closed my eyes again, letting the warmth of Daniel's hand and the energy in the space guide me. I felt a surprising mixture of emotions, tenderness, wonder, and a quiet longing. There was a moment of shared breath, a pause in time where everything else faded away. The garden, the sun, even Mr. Hargrove's presence became background noise to the quiet intensity between us. Daniel squeezed my hand gently, and I realized he was feeling it too. The subtle, profound connection that came from mutual recognition and trust. There was no need to speak. Words would have been clumsy, unnecessary. The silence was a language in itself, rich and resonant. We lingered like that, hands intertwined, breathing together, the garden around us alive and yet completely private, a cocoon of light and warmth. When I finally opened my eyes fully, I saw Daniel smile softly, an expression that mirrored my own awe and quiet joy. Mr. Hargrove observed us silently, a knowing glint in his eye. "The garden has a way of revealing what the heart already knows," he said quietly. "Sometimes it takes a gentle nudge to see it clearly." I felt a wave of gratitude, not just toward him, but toward this unexpected moment, this strange and beautiful gift of connection. I looked at Daniel again, feeling an unspoken understanding between us. Whatever this was, it was tender, consensual, and deeply emotional. A shared discovery that would linger in our hearts far beyond the garden's boundaries. As we finally released our hands, the sun dipping lower in the sky, I felt a sense of peace. The garden had given us a gift, a new lens to see each other, to feel each other, and perhaps even to see ourselves more clearly. It was subtle, almost imperceptible to anyone outside this clearing, but for Daniel and me, it was transformative. And I knew, with a quiet certainty, that this was only the beginning. After that afternoon in the garden, a quiet shift settled over our home. Daniel and I moved through our days with the subtle awareness of what had transpired, carrying it like a secret jewel we didn't fully understand yet. There was no rush to name it, no pressure to define it, just a growing, undeniable closeness, tempered with respect and curiosity. It was a few days later, during one of those late winter afternoons when the sun slanted low and everything was bathed in a gentle amber light, that I found myself back in the garden alone. The scent of damp earth mingled with the faint perfume of winter roses, their petals clinging stubbornly to life despite the chill. I sat on the stone bench by the fountain, letting the sound of the water soothe my thoughts. Daniel joined me quietly, his steps soft on the gravel path. He carried a small notebook in his hand, the corners worn, pages filled with sketches and observations he jotted down over the years. He sat beside me without a word, just the familiar weight of his presence grounding me in the moment. "I've been thinking about that day," he said eventually, his voice low, almost tentative. "About what we felt in the clearing. I nodded, feeling the warmth of his gaze. Me too. It's like we saw each other differently. Really saw each other. He smiled faintly. It was strange, wasn't it? That kind of connection. It's hard to explain, but it felt right. It did feel right. And yet, it also stirred something more profound in me, a recognition that life was fragile, fleeting, and that moments of pure honesty and vulnerability were rare and precious. I reached out, brushing my fingers against his hand, a simple gesture laden with meaning. I didn't expect it to be like that, I admitted. I thought we'd just try it because Mr. Hargrove suggested it, but it wasn't about him, it was about us. Daniel nodded, his eyes softening. Exactly, and it's not something I want to lose. There was a pause, a shared silence that carried the weight of understanding between us. In that quiet, I realized how much I had grown to trust him, not just as my brother, but as a companion in this strange, delicate dance of discovery. There was mutual respect in every glance, every touch, a reverence for the vulnerability we had both shared. I've been journaling a bit, Daniel said, lifting the notebook, not about the garden, but about us, about how it felt to really be seen. I thought, maybe we could explore it further, slowly, and see where it leads. I felt my chest tighten with anticipation. His words were careful, deliberate, but beneath them, there was an honesty that left no room for misunderstanding. We were venturing into uncharted emotional territory, yet there was no coercion, no urgency, just mutual consent and curiosity. I like that, I whispered, squeezing his hand gently. Slowly, thoughtfully, together. And so we began, in our own quiet way. We spent afternoons in the garden, talking in ways we hadn't before, not about chores or childhood memories, but about dreams, regrets, and the small truths that often went unspoken. Daniel would describe a sketch he had made or an observation about the flowers, and somehow it became a metaphor for life, for trust, for the delicate threads that connect people. One afternoon, as the sun dipped behind the tall hedges, casting long shadows across the path, Daniel and I sat close on the bench, shoulders touching. We were sharing a blanket, a small comfort against the chill, and I felt the warmth of his arm against mine. It wasn't just physical warmth, it was the warmth of shared understanding, a deep recognition of each other's hearts. I never realized, I said softly, how much I've wanted this kind of connection. Not with anyone else, with you. And it's not inappropriate, it's just real. Daniel nodded, his hand brushing mine gently, thumb stroking in a slow, reassuring rhythm. I feel the same. It's not about changing anything in the past or stepping over boundaries we've always had. It's about being honest about how we feel now, about trusting each other. There was a moment, long and unspoken, where the air seemed to shimmer with possibility. We didn't rush into it. We didn't need to. The connection we were building was patient, deliberate, and full of care. Every glance, every touch, every shared laugh reinforced the emotional bond we were cultivating. Mr. Hargrove had given us the nudge, but it was our own willingness to be vulnerable, to be open, that had created something extraordinary. I realized then that the garden wasn't just a physical space, it was a mirror for the heart. It revealed what we already carried inside us, the capacity for empathy, understanding, and deep emotional intimacy. By the end of that afternoon, when the first stars began to peek through the evening sky, Daniel and I lingered in the garden, unwilling to leave the quiet sanctuary we had found together. We didn't speak much, but the silence was filled with meaning. We had discovered a new level of connection, one built on mutual respect, shared vulnerability, and the tender acknowledgement of each other's presence. As I watched Daniel walk back toward the house, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. Life had handed us an unexpected gift, and we had embraced it with care, patience, and love, not in the conventional sense, but in the pure, unspoken ways that mattered most. And I knew that tomorrow and every day after, we would continue to explore this connection, not recklessly, but thoughtfully, and with hearts wide open.